The first part of this talk is actually not going to be me, but it's going to be Arthur. So I'm going to ask Arthur if he can come to the front. It was supposed to be Arthur and Daisy. They're married. They're both psychiatrists. Arthur teaches at CUHK. Obviously, I'm not an expert here, so I've asked an expert to come and talk to us about these 4 questions. What is depression? What causes it? What does it feel like? And why should we take it seriously? It's a topic that should be taken seriously. So let's hear from Arthur this first part.
Thanks very much. You hear me, right? Okay, I should stand somewhere around here. Right? Okay, so thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you guys what I do for my day job, of course, but I think it's also about this very common mental health problem, which is depression, that I think many of us would have had, gone through bits of it, or know someone who's gone through some of it, gone through depression. So what is it? It's actually the most common mental health problem in the world. So you pick any single year, you do a survey, roughly 6% of the population would have had gone through depression over the past 12 months. All right, in a lifetime, about 14%, up to 14%. And if you do this survey this year, it will be a little bit higher than this in red instead of green or blue here. So it fluctuates according to this environmental situation. And what does it feel like? Or how do we understand what depression is? These are intertwined questions. So let's put it this way. Depression is a common health problem. It's a health problem, all right? It's characterized by persistent and profound changes in the way we feel, all right? It's not that people with depression will choose to feel depressed or choose to not have faith or choose to not focus, or choose to be very tired and lazy. Rather, there's a loss of ability to be otherwise. So there is that inflexible, irresistible, inevitable drive or loss of capacity to have positive feelings, to have energy, to focus on things that we should do, or to have stamina, all right? So it's very difficult, and it affects our mood, the way we think, the ability for us to, get through problems, all right, and react, to stress or even positive things. We don't react positively because our ability to react positively is lost because of depression. And then, perhaps, and many of you haven't known about this yet, it is also a disorder of our body. Right? And in depression, I'm going to go into that in a little bit, there are broad physiological changes in our body that feels a little bit like, diabetes, feels a little bit like broad similarities with infectious change or inflammatory changes in our body that we have when we are fighting an infection. So it is a medical disorder, all right? It affects the way or our ability to cope with school. It affects our ability to cope with work. It screws up our relationships. And then it is the most important or even the final common pathway to suicide. If there is no depression in this world, perhaps there would be no suicide or just, very low rates compared to what we have now. And as I touched upon a little bit, if you have depression, you're more likely to have physical health problems. And if you have physical health problems and you have depression, you're more likely to die of your physical health problems because of the depression. So there are lots of studies in different areas that shows that if you have depression and you have something like, a heart disease, or diabetes, by treating the depression, you are actually reducing the chances that you die of the other medical condition, like a heart attack, like a diabetes. So we can actually prevent a heart attack by treating your depression if you so happen to have the two things together. And it's been also recognized by the World Bank on numerous occasions that depression is one of the top, and if not the top, cause of loss of economic money, put it in simple terms. So it's a huge economic burden to the society. A little bit like going into, how do we diagnose depression, or how do I know that I have depression? What's the difference from, normal sadness? Now, let's put it this way. Usually, negative emotional experiences are brief. They are isolated. Like all of us would have had some periods in our life that we lose sleep for 1 or 2 days, and then it's fine. That we feel upset, we feel down for a couple of days, and then we feel better, right? Or we feel tired, or feel a little bit, downcast or pessimistic. But for a couple of days or a week, we feel better. It is not so often that all of these things will come together at the same time, all right? And then, worse still, they don't go away. And when that happens, all right, for more than 2 weeks, perhaps it is a health problem, all right? And it is less likely to go away by itself, all right? So that is actually how we diagnose depression, when we have persistent and profound changes in our feeling states, when we lose interest, the capacity to be positive, when we can't focus, when we feel so pessimistic that even we have thoughts of death, all right, and then the biological disturbances like sleep disturbance and changes in appetite, and slowing in our thoughts and movements, all right, then we make a diagnosis of depression. It's a clinical diagnosis. And we don't diagnose by, popping needles in your body or doing scans or stuff. These are not for diagnosis, all right. The diagnosis is clinical. Depression is many things. It is a disorder of the brain. I'm not going to show all the funny scans, today. We don't have time for that. But just to let you know, it is the disorder of the affective circuit not being able to, hold itself, all right, to balance the against the stresses and then fight back. That fight back and tipping the balance bit act, is lost, all right, and that's depression. And many of you would have heard about serotonin and neurotransmitters. Yes, these are important mediators of the disturbance in the brain, but they are not the only thing, all right? They're important because they explain the currency of, affective circuits or functioning, and we use them to treat the depression, but they're not the end of the story, of course. And depression is also a disorder of the body, as I said. There is a dysfunction in the immune system that is very similar to what you get when you get the common cold. So if you want to imagine, biologically, deeply, apart from the sadness bit, what it feels like to have depression, just imagine when you had the common cold, all right? But usually it gets better in a couple of days' time, all right? You feel tired, you have pains and aches and everything, you're slow, you can't focus, you want to do something, check some emails, forget about it, can't do it any longer, What mediates is a series of wrong chemicals in the body that controls your immune system. And in depression, we actually have very similar changes detected in our body as well. So it is actually a disorder of the immune system as well. And it's a disorder of the metabolic system. People with chronic depression have the kind of, insulin resistance or inability to process sugar in the body, like people with diabetes. Not all of them, but similar. So, and then recently, scientists even told us that the microbes, even the microbes in our guts, are not, normal when we have depression. All right, complex story. I'm going to tell you more on Saturday. Yeah, but it is a physiological disorder. If you look at this slide, and I put next to it, any medical diagnosis, they look similar. It is a health problem, and it is a problem that doctors can help. Now, usually when I show this slide in my class to medical students, there's a gasp of breath. Oh gosh, I need to remember all these. No, that's not what I want you guys to do. The most important thing I want to get across today is as to what causes depression. Depression is not caused by one thing or two things. And most importantly, depression is not caused by your inability to do something, or your failure, your carelessness, your bad character. None of these would cause depression. Even a major mistake you committed in your life, in your business, in your work, would not be sufficient to cause depression. So depression is many things, but it's definitely not your fault. It's important. So in broad brushes, to have depression, you need to have a right set of genes to start with, all right? And then the set of genes may not necessarily give you depression. And then you go into a different, a specific gender. We have a gender, right? Gender will have complicated ways of affecting the risk of you getting depression. It's generally more common in female, but yeah, men get depression as well, right? And there is some kind of, exposure to stresses or negative life events early in life. It's not necessary, but it very often happens, all right? That changes the way your brain grows. And then that might have something to do with your personality, and also personality is a function of your brain structure and your experiences early in life. Married to the right kind of dose of current stresses and adversities, and that will give you depression, all right? So it is not a very straightforward thing to think about, all right? And if you go to ask patients or people who have recovered from depression, ask them, actually, do you know why you got depression? They would tell you, I have no idea. I just, lived and faced stresses like everyone else would, I didn't suffer especially bad in this, COVID or whatever, but I have depression. I don't know why, It is very similar to the kind of conversation that I will have when I talk to people who got COVID. Actually, I have another study which is about COVID-19 as well. Nearly all of them told me, I really have no idea how I caught COVID. I wash hands like people with OCD, and I put on masks, and I did everything, but I still got it, all right? So it could feel this way, and to many people, or if not all, it's important to understand that depression is not caused by anybody's fault or any singular incident that you didn't cope well. It is a health disorder, and like all other health disorders, it's a condition from complex origins, all right? And if it happens, the way to go about doing it is to get the proper treatment that you need, and that's a basic right. And in my clinic, when I tell people, my patients that, okay, have you thought about the possibility that you might be clinically depressed or suffer from this clinical condition? To many people, it could feel like I'm telling them you are suffering from cancer of the lung, you are suffering from, some terminal illness, all right? But then I will switch channel and then reassure them that it's actually quite the contrary. It sounds very bad that for a doctor to tell you that you have such a serious condition, all right? But the difference of this from a diagnosis of cancer is now quite highly treatable, though, for some conditions. But for depression is a highly treatable disorder. It's a highly treatable disorder. And with treatment, most episodes of depression will last for another 3 to 6 months, all right? And that's provided that you stay on treatment, and then the doctor is not lazy and not doing his stuff. If we all do what we should be doing, most episodes last 3 to 6 months, and more than 50% of people would respond to some treatment in 6 months, and then more than three quarters in a year. And actually, most of them will have some improvement, if not complete remission, in a year's time, all right? And the biggest problem with depression treatment is still treatment access. Whether you want to get it, whether you get it, all right, or whether you stay on the treatment, this kind of stuff will have the most important bearing on whether people get better from depression. And there's a whole range of things on the menu you can choose for getting your depression treated. From the mildest condition where you can get psychological treatment, self-help, exercise, all right? Combined on that, if you have more severe conditions, moderate to severe conditions, antidepressants would work, would be necessary, it saves your lives, all right? Well, not every single drug would work for everyone, all right? There's a mix and match, a kind of, work is needed in there. So a little bit of insistence on the part of the patients and the family in going back to the doctor, talking back to the doctor, all right? It's important. I always tell my patients, you come back to me. You're not happy, with the treatment, come back and, seek, avenge yourself, revenge on me, so it's my problem. So you come back to me, complain to me, whatever. The most important thing is you go back to the doctor and tell the doctor what is not working so the doctor can keep helping you. So that kind of interaction is very important. And then there's an important and unfortunate subset of patients who do not benefit from these standard approaches to treatment. So we are aware of that. We're talking about like 10 to 20% of people with depression. They've tried everything, all right, standard antidepressants, and it's not working. We have new treatments for them now. We have ECT, which is older, and we have other new electromagnetic types of treatment to help to kickstart certain areas of the brain back into action. Okay, we have newer models of understanding depression that inspire new drug developments, and they are being tested and also getting introduced in Hong Kong as well. So there is actually hope. And that's actually what I need to say today from the standpoint of the doctor. I really hope to see you guys next Saturday. Daisy will, join me in the seminar as well, and really hope to have more conversations and let you guys know more about this condition and answer more of your questions. So I pass the podium to